The stocks and the $20 million inheritance from my father-in-law will be passed on to the eldest daughter, my wife. Smiling, Michael exchanged glances with me and the relatives. Could it be that Michael knows nothing about it? Glancing at Emily, she had a surprised look on her face that made us all put on serious expressions. I said, "What?" in response. Michael then looked puzzled and began to show signs of unease. "What?" And Michael returned the question with a similarly clueless expression. He really doesn't know anything. This could be a good opportunity, couldn't it? I managed to suppress my laughter and kept a straight face. "Michael, you're not aware of it, are you? What are you talking about? Emily has no right to the inheritance." "What? You must be joking." "Really, I may be younger, but I wish you would show a bit more respect." As Michael started to show clear signs of irritation, I smiled sweetly at him. "Because Emily is. I am James, a 34-year-old married man with 2 children. My father was a successful businessman with many stocks, and frankly, we never struggled for money. If only you would take over as my successor." My father had hoped, and I wanted to meet that expectation, but I had a dream I needed to fulfill. I dreamed of running a diner, serving dishes I cooked. I preferred the struggles of cooking over studying business management. "You're not cut out to be my successor." Seeing my interest was solely in cooking, my father gave up and supported my dream. He provided the funds for culinary school and to start a diner, allowing me to manage my dream diner while doing the cooking as well. Thanks to my business studies, I managed the diner well, and now we're expanding with 2nd and 3rd locations. At our first location, where I am, there's my wife who cooks with me, our children who eagerly help out, and colleagues who have been with us since the start, creating a homey atmosphere. Of course, our dishes like the richly simmered stew, fluffy omelets, and hashed browns crispy on the outside, soft on the inside, are our pride. My father, whom we invited, praised our food with tears in his eyes. I wished to invite my mother too, but she had already passed away. Instead, I invited my sister Emily to the diner. "Your cooking has always been delicious since we were kids." Despite her words, I don't have much interaction with Emily. Since going to culinary school and living on my own, I hadn't been in much contact with her. Emily is married to Michael, my elder brother-in-law. To be honest, I was worried about Emily because of Michael. "James," William called, "Thanks," on a day off from the diner. While I was engrossed in the accounting, I received a call from my best friend, William. William, my best friend since high school, is now a skilled lawyer. "Sorry to keep you, William. What's up? Calm down and listen. Your dad has." That's when I heard the news of my father's passing. My father had terminal cancer and was hospitalized for a long time. Because he didn't want to show his children his weak side, he had endured the pain, which eventually delayed his treatment. "James, Emily, you are busy people, so don't come more than once a month." He said so, hardly allowing us to visit him. By the time he was taken to the hospital, it was too late, and I had prepared myself for the time. Or so I thought. Before I knew it, I found myself being supported by my wife, organizing the funeral. I looked for Emily during the funeral, thinking she must be upset, but she was nowhere to be found. Confused and having a bad feeling about it, but as the main organizer, I couldn't just leave, leaving me in a helpless situation. "James, my condolences on your loss." "William, thank you for everything. I owed a lot to your dad." William looked up to my father as an uncle and received support from him for his legal career. With that history, William, along with his wife, has been supporting me. "So, where's Emily?" I did reach out, but no response. Checking my phone, I saw that I had indeed contacted Emily. But the call went to voicemail, and my messages remained unread. I was worried about my sister, but attending to the guests who came for my father's funeral left me no time to reach out. After the funeral was over, when things finally settled down and we gathered the relatives to open the will with William acting as a lawyer, that's when it happened. "We're here. Michael, wait. Emily, Michael, and their little child appeared unexpectedly. While we were all surprised by their sudden appearance, Michael boldly walked in. Following him was Emily, holding the hand of their child. Showing up now, of all times. This place is always so gloomy. Come on, hurry up and do whatever you need to with the flowers." I know. Michael, smirking and giving orders to Emily, seemed not to hear my voice. Emily looked worn out, lacking the energy to resist, while the child clung to her in silence. The relatives were visibly annoyed, but Michael seemed unconcerned. In the midst of this tense atmosphere, Emily was apologizing wearily. This attitude of Michael's was precisely my concern. My first impression of Michael was of a rude man. The first time I met him was at a family introduction. "Sorry, I'm late." He had arrived late to an important occasion. His excuse was that he had drunk too much the night before. He was always smirking, sizing us up with his eyes. My father and I were considering opposing the marriage at that point. However, his parents were genuinely nice people. They apologized deeply to us and made Michael apologize as well. Convinced by them and Emily, we decided to wait and see. Unaware of our concerns, Michael's impolite behavior continued. "Hello, Emily and Michael. Michael wanted to try your food, so I brought him along," Emily explained. I heard it was delicious from Emily. It was the same when Emily brought him to our diner. When Emily was with us, he always showed a calm demeanor towards everyone. It felt almost as if the way he acted during our initial meeting was a lie, so different was his behavior. However, the moment she said, "I'm just going to use the restroom." "Sure." As soon as Emily left her seat, the atmosphere changed drastically. He looked around the diner and then sneered disdainfully. "It's so common, kind of tacky, isn't it? What? And the menu, it's also mediocre." He kept making such remarks until Emily returned. I thought it was bad enough that I wanted to advise Emily to break up with him multiple times. Both my wife and father had reservations about Michael, and they hinted at Emily to consider breaking up. "Be careful, Emily. You are not alone anymore," Michael would say. "Yes, thank you," she would reply. However, Michael was kind to Emily, and she seemed happy with him. Moreover, Emily was already pregnant with Michael's child. Rather than leaving Emily to be a single mother, it seemed better to hold Michael accountable, so we couldn't just force them to separate. That was, in fact, the last time I saw Emily and Michael. After that, there was no contact, not even news of the child's birth. And now, here was Michael, sitting arrogantly before us. It seems my first impression wasn't wrong after all. He looked at Emily, who was praying in front of our father's altar with tears, as if he couldn't understand her. Given this, it's possible that Emily was hardly allowed to visit our father. "Are you okay?" Emily just shook her head. Clinging to Emily was my nephew, whom I was meeting for the first time, staring intently at me. "What's your name?" "This is Steve, my son. He's 5, Emily finally spoke. A 5-year-old still clinging to his mom. Can you believe that? Must be her soft parenting," Michael interjected with a scoff. Emily sighed deeply at his remark. It's not wrong for a 5-year-old to seek comfort from his mother, and it's normal for a child to be shy or freeze up in front of relatives he's meeting for the first time. In fact, while some relatives were concerned for Steve, None showed any discomfort with his behavior. It was Michael's attitude that was drawing puzzled looks from everyone. "Who's the lawyer?" Michael asked. "That would be me," William responded. "Huh? And how much is Emily's father's inheritance worth? He was a major shareholder, right?" At Michael's question, William silently showed him some documents. Michael smirked at them. "The stocks and the $20 million inheritance from my father-in-law will be passed on to the eldest daughter, my wife." As Michael said this with a smile, I exchanged glances with the relatives. Could it be that Michael knows nothing about this? Glancing at Emily, she looked shocked. That made us all put on serious expressions. What? We found ourselves responding. Seeing our reaction, Michael looked puzzled and then showed signs of panic. "What?" And Michael echoed back with a similarly clueless expression. He really doesn't know anything. This could be a good opportunity, couldn't it? I managed to suppress my laughter and kept a straight face. "Michael, it seems you're not aware of anything," I said. "What are you talking about?" he replied. "Emily has no rights to the inheritance," I informed him. "What? Don't give me that crap," he snapped back. Honestly, even though I'm younger, I wish he'd show a bit more respect to his brother-in-law. Seeing Michael start to get visibly irritated, I couldn't help but smile. "Because Emily is. It's because I'm not biologically related to Dad," Emily herself continued. "In fact, Emily and our father were not related by blood. Our parents had both remarried, bringing children from their previous marriages. I was my father's child, and Emily was my stepmother's. Nevertheless, I adored my stepmother, and Emily respected my father just like her real dad, and our parents showered us with love without distinction. Since Emily called me Big Brother when she was still in daycare, I've cherished her just like a real sister. My father often patted Emily's head, teaching her the business management that I had abandoned, and cherished her in his own way. Perhaps he even spoiled her more than me, being his daughter. However, my father had not legally adopted Emily. Emily's biological father, my stepmother's ex-husband, had cheated, leading to their divorce, and he insisted on paying only child support, leaving the legalities as they were. Therefore, Emily had no rights to the inheritance." "What? I wasn't informed about this. Strictly speaking, you chose not to listen." Hearing our explanation, Michael became furious. Emily, looking exasperated, said to him, "I tried to explain this to you both before we got married and when I heard of Dad's passing, but you never listened to me. What a joke. I came all this way to this rusty town, and it's all for nothing," Michael yelled, about to lash out at Emily. "Stop it." William intervened, grabbing his arm faster than anyone else and restraining him. His expression was filled with anger. Taken aback by William's unexpected demeanor, I froze, ready to protect Emily. "Emily, it's been a while. Remember me? William, my brother's friend. That's right." Then William handed Michael over to the male relatives and gently addressed Emily, who was holding Steve. While keeping an eye on Michael, I was taken aback by William's quick switch in demeanor. "Emily, I'm really sorry. Let me have a look." William, with a look of apology, gently lifted Emily's clothing, revealing painful bruises. This caused the women present to let out cries of dismay. "James, do you have a first aid kit or something? Hang on, I'll get it right away." As we administered first aid, we got the full story from Emily. It turned out that Michael had occasionally been physically abusive towards her. Whenever he was displeased, he'd lash out as he had just done. "Why didn't you say something sooner? Because after Mom went to heaven, you and the others let me stay in our home because I was your sister, even before I got married. You all subtly warned me, but I didn't want to cause any more trouble. Don't be too hard on her. she was probably in a sort of brainwashed state. Indeed, if she resisted, Michael would become violent, and since he spent all his earnings on himself, Emily had to work to sustain their livelihood. Amidst raising Steve almost alone, juggling work, childcare, and household chores, Emily was evidently exhausted. In such a situation, it seems she was drained of the will to resist, conditioned to comply with Michael's demands. "I just wanted to protect Steve at least," Emily said, her tears flowing freely. "Seeing my sister like this filled me with rage. How dare he harm my dear sister?" Looking at William next to me, he gave me a firm nod. "Emily, I'm entrusted with a will because your father trusted me, but my specialty is actually divorces. What? If you're ready to make the decision, I'll do everything in my power to help you. I'll ensure both you and your son are freed," William stated, holding Emily's hand and looking into her eyes with determination. "More than anything, your father asked me to help Emily, so I want you to take my hand. For your father, who was worried about you till the end, and to protect your son." Hearing this, Emily made up her mind. She firmly grasped William's hand in return. "I'll divorce Michael. Please help me." "Gladly. Leave it to me." Afterwards, Michael was taken away by the police we had called. His attempt to get violent was witnessed by all the relatives, who agreed to testify. Even so, Michael was still shouting, "You have no proof I laid a hand on her. What a sore loser." We all looked coldly at Michael as he was restrained by the police. Amid his ranting, it was Steve, of all people, who delivered the final blow. "Mr. Lawyer." "Steve, what's up? Does this count as evidence?" Steve said, offering up a cell phone. It was my father's phone, which had been missing since he was hospitalized, leaving us only able to communicate through the hospital's phone. "Why did Steve have it?" "I only met Grandpa once, but he told me to press this if Mommy was getting hurt and to show it to Mr. Lawyer later, and he would help." "I see. I'll borrow this." Upon checking, William found clear video evidence of Michael's abusive behavior. With such compelling evidence, Emily could surely win the case and secure a divorce along with compensation. "You brat. I'll remember this. You too, Emily. I'll never forgive you. That's our line. We'll never forgive you. And as long as I'm around, you won't get anywhere near them. What? Just wait. I'll make sure you pay for your crimes," William declared. Steve looked up at William with admiration in his eyes. It seems I wasn't needed after all. Watching the exchange, I couldn't help but smile wryly. And until the end, Michael continued his rant, only to be arrested. "We'll definitely win the compensation and triumph together." "Yes, thank you very much," Emily responded, finally smiling like she used to. Noticing William's flushed face as he looked at her smile, I realized something. Come to think of it, William has always been concerned about Emily. Mr. Lawyer really did help, just like Grandpa said. Seeing Steve happy made me think he was far better than Michael ever was. But then, have you all forgotten about me? I wondered aloud. Oh, my bad. After that, we decided to adjourn for now and reconvene later when things had settled down. After taking Emily to the hospital, I sat in front of my father's grave. I guess Dad was trying to protect Emily too. I feel ashamed for not realizing it sooner. Thank you. Because of Dad, we were able to save Emily and Steve. From now on, William will probably take care of them, but of course, I plan to help too. They are my dear sister and nephew, after all. Thanks to William's efforts as a skilled lawyer, we successfully secured a substantial settlement and child support for Emily, closing the divorce. Michael, who received a prison sentence for his actions, will be taken in by his parents upon release. They plan to send him to a distant relative who is a fisherman on a remote island. Someone Michael has always been afraid of, who has promised not to let him escape. With a restraining order also in place, Emily and Steve can now feel safe. Meanwhile, Emily and Steve have temporarily moved in with us at the diner. Emily's company has been informed of the situation, and she has been granted some time off. Well, sorry to bother you when you're so tired. It's okay. What's this important thing you wanted to talk about? Alone with Emily, I decided to share a significant truth with her. It's a will from Dad. He named you as his successor. What? Dad had made arrangements to name Emily as his successor and inherit his estate. Emily was taken aback by my words. Originally, Emily was being groomed as the successor to the company founded by our father, undergoing training for the role. However, her training was put on hold when she became pregnant with Steve. Even though I left things halfway, is it really okay for me to accept this? Of course, the funds I received to start this diner were given to me as a living gift, so now it's your turn to receive the rest. But I nodded with a smile, seeing her reluctance. I'm grateful to you and Mom, I said. What? My dream of running a diner was inspired by Emily and my stepmom. Losing my biological mother as a baby, my stepmom's cooking became the taste of home for me. She taught me how to cook with kindness, standing by my side in the kitchen. After my stepmom passed away, cooking her dishes made Emily, who had been crying, smile and say, "It's delicious, it tastes like Mom's." Seeing that smile, I wanted to make more people smile with my cooking. I want to create a diner that brings smiles to people's faces like that. That desire became my goal. It's my way of thanking you for giving me a dream. I explained with a smile, and Emily nodded back with a smile. All right, I'll cook something delicious now. What do you want to eat? How about omelets? It was Mom's specialty, right? Leave it to me. Emily, like in the old days, smiled and said, "Delicious," as she ate my food. Steve too smiled brightly at her. Eventually, Emily inherited Dad's estate and took over his business. Furthermore, after William asked her out and they dated for about a year, they got married. Steve's words, "I wish Mr. Lawyer could become my dad," played a significant role in their decision to remarry. I'm genuinely happy to see them doing so well. Surely, Dad is watching over them from heaven, feeling relieved. By the way, when did you start liking Emily? Since we were kids. Remember how poor our family was? Your father's support allowed me to become a lawyer, but I always thought I wasn't good enough for Emily, so I never said anything. William, who played a significant role in this whole situation, is now happily smiling. His years of unreciprocated love finally paid off. Steve has grown fond of William, and they seem just like a real father and son from the start. Emily, who cried in my arms when our stepmother passed away. I truly wish for her to find happiness this time. All right, let's give it our all today. My family responds energetically to my words. Today, like every day, I'll continue making delicious food with my beloved family. It's a waste for a middle school dropout like you to even be on a bus. You should walk and suffer instead. During the company trip, I was left behind at a service area because of my bossy supervisor. I wondered what I had to endure this, but an unexpected turn of events was waiting for me. My name is Kevin. I lost my parents in a traffic accident when I was in elementary school. It was my grandparents who took me in while I was grieving. Thanks to them, I was able to overcome the sadness of losing my parents. We weren't a wealthy family, but I had happy days. My grandfather used to say, "People should help each other to live." Kevin, you should become someone who can help others. I've always kept that in mind. In high school, a significant incident occurred. A classmate named Michael was harassing another student named James. The harassment escalated daily, and James became increasingly dispirited. I wasn't close to James at the time, but I wanted to do something for him. I thought it was time to help someone, just as my grandfather had taught me. One day, seeing Michael hurling insults at James, I intervened, saying, "Stop it, that's way too much." Michael was momentarily surprised, but quickly became confrontational. "What's it to you? Mind your own business." "It's normal to stop someone who's being cruel," I retorted. Playing the hero, "Huh, annoying," he sneered. Michael left with a click of his tongue. James thanked me, and I thought that would be the end of it, but I was wrong. Michael shifted his target to me. "So you want to protect James? Then you should be the sacrifice, Mr. Hero." He started to mock me relentlessly. Especially after he found out I had no parents and was living with my grandparents, it got worse. He even ridiculed the packed lunch my grandmother made for me, saying, "That is a plain packed lunch. Can't your grandma make anything better?" Sure, my packed lunch had more traditional dishes, but I liked it. More than anything, I couldn't stand him speaking ill of my family. I ignored him, thinking it a waste of time to engage, but the stress gradually built up. One day, as usual, Michael picked on my packed lunch. "Eating trash again. You should just cut tie with your grandma, who can only make that kind of lunch." Hearing that, I reached my limit. There's no way one should speak like that. Before I knew it, I had grabbed a water bottle nearby and thrown it at Michael. Whoa! Michael dodged skillfully, so the bottle hit the window instead. The glass shattered with a loud noise. I was burning up and breathing heavily. What happened? Attracted by the noise, our teacher, Mr. William, came into the classroom. What followed was a flurry of cleaning up the broken glass and explaining the situation to Mr. William. After hearing from both Michael and me, Mr. William said, "Michael went too far, but Kevin, responding with violence is also wrong." I agreed and apologized quietly. In front of Mr. William, Michael also apologized to me, albeit reluctantly. However, this incident made Mr. William keep a closer eye on me. I was labeled as someone quick to anger. It was an unpleasant experience, but fortunately, the harassment towards James stopped. If James wasn't suffering anymore, I decided to take it as a win. By the time I was a senior in high school and it was time to choose my career path, I decided to work in caregiving. Spending time with my grandparents sparked my interest in working with the elderly. While I did have the option of going to college, my grandparents, John and Margaret, said they would support me going to college if I wanted to, but financially, it was tight, and the incident of breaking the window had sealed the deal, preventing me from getting any college recommendations. Besides, I had no particular desire to go to college and really wanted to ease the burden on my grandparents. I didn't see the need to study for entrance exams just to go to college, so I chose to work instead. Fortunately, I managed to get a job as a care staff member in a reputable nursing home, which seemed to relieve my grandparents. Given that the job was too far to commute from my grandparents' home, I moved out to live on my own upon securing the position. Working in caregiving was more challenging than I expected, both physically and mentally. One of my peers quit within 3 months, which I thought was understandable. Perhaps because I lived with my grandparents, I naturally understood the perspectives of the elderly. I was able to get along well with the clients and had a good reputation. Even the clients who were said to be difficult would listen to me, so I was appreciated by the other staff members. My direct boss, George, also recognized my work, which led to a pay raise, and I was able to start sending money back to my grandparents. I was thrilled when I heard that my grandparents were able to go on a trip for the first time in a while, feeling like I had finally been able to repay them. However, one day my boss suddenly changed. George had to quit due to a sudden illness. His replacement was a woman named Linda. I was hoping she would be kind, but that hope was quickly dashed. Linda turned out to be a mean-spirited office tyrant. She was rude to her subordinates and especially harsh with her tone. It was even worse for the new employees. Linda was particularly persistent in bothering a girl named Emily. Even during breaks, I saw Linda nagging Emily, saying, "You're so plain. Do you have a boyfriend? I bet you don't." Emily clearly looked uncomfortable, so I couldn't help but intervene, saying, "Please stop." Linda glared at me furiously. "It's just a little teasing. Getting angry over that is ridiculous," she snapped. After Linda walked away, Emily thanked me but said, "It's okay. You don't have to defend me anymore. I don't want to cause trouble for you." I felt frustrated, wishing she didn't have to worry about me. Emily's concerns came true, and Linda started targeting me. She harassed me in various ways when no one was watching. She would say things like, "Your high school was for idiots. It's not even a high school. You're the same as a middle school dropout." But having dealt with similar situations in high school, I was prepared to let such comments slide off me. I kept working calmly, unaffected by her. Seeing this, Linda became even angrier, but I remained unfazed. Meanwhile, I was still concerned about Emily and made a point to check in on her from time to time. Emily wasn't being harassed anymore and gradually opened up to me. Eventually, we became close enough to chat casually, and I found myself wanting to know more about her. I think I was starting to see her as more than just a colleague. Then, a company trip was announced. This event happens only once every few years. This would be my second time participating. Thanks to Mr. Thomas, the company president, splurging, we could relax in a luxury inn. Last time, I had great memories of enjoying lavish meals and relaxing in message therapy. Linda was in charge of organizing the trip. Though the inn was different from last time, we were going to stay in a well-known luxury inn again. I eagerly awaited the departure day. On the day of the trip, we headed to the inn on a charter bus. Mr. Thomas was the only one who would join later due to some errands. I had heard Emily would come, but she was nowhere to be seen. Perhaps she was absent due to illness or something else. I felt a bit sad. Halfway through, the bus stopped at a rest area for a break. With some time to spare, I wandered around the shops when Linda approached me. "The departure time has been extended by 40 minutes because the driver wants to check the bus," she said. "Is that so?" "Thank you," I replied, relieved at the extra time, which allowed me to have a leisurely meal. After eating, I headed to the bus 5 minutes before the new departure time. But the bus was nowhere to be found. I wondered if I had come to the wrong parking spot, but no buses were in sight in the parking lot. Panicking, I called Linda. "Linda, I can find the bus. Where are you?" Linda's laughter came through the phone. "The bus left about 40 minutes ago. We left because you didn't show up," she said. I broke out in a cold sweat. "But you said the departure time was extended by 40 minutes, I protested. "What are you talking about? I have no idea. You must have misunderstood. If you want to come to the inn, you'll have to get there on your own," she retorted. Linda had deliberately given me the wrong departure time to humiliate me. And telling me to get there on my own was easier said than done, given the distance from the rest area to the inn. While I was feeling helpless, Linda mocked, "We can turn the bus around now. Anyway, a bus is too good for a middle school dropout like you. You should walk and struggle," before hanging up. Using my cell phone, I looked up the route to the inn, which was situated deep in the mountains where public transportation was scarce. Unfortunately, it seemed faster to walk. I considered taking a taxi, but it was too expensive. Resigned and frustrated, I decided to walk. I would be exhausted by the time I reached the inn, but at least it was a reputable place, After walking for about 2 hours, I had made my way onto a mountain path. The end should be close by now. That's when I suddenly spotted an elderly man. He was looking around the ground with a troubled expression, glancing around in all directions. "Is something wrong?" I asked, unable to ignore him. "I can find my cell phone. I must have dropped it around here while I'm picking flowers, but I can't remember the exact spot," he explained. "I'll help you look for it," I offered without hesitation. The elderly man was hesitant, but I assured him, "I'm not in a hurry." Together, we entered the forest and began our search. We thoroughly checked the path he had walked but found nothing. However, he was sure he had it just before starting picking flowers, so it had to be somewhere in the forest. After an hour with no luck, the elderly man said, "I feel bad making you stay any longer. It's okay to stop now," but I reassured him, "Please don't worry about it," and continued the search for the cell phone. An hour later, we finally found it. It was hidden beneath the fallen leaves. The elderly man expressed his gratitude over and over again. Even though searching for the cell phone took some time, it was worth it knowing I had helped him. After that, I walked for another hour and finally arrived at the inn. It had been a full 5 hours since I left the rest area. My clothes were soaked with sweat, and I was covered in mud from the cell phone search. I was eager to clean up in the shower. Upon entering the inn, a woman named Irene, who introduced herself as the proprietress, greeted me. She had the refined air expected of a high-class inn's proprietress. After giving my name, Irene said, "You've had a tough time. I'll show you to your room now," and led me to it. However, the room I was shown to could hardly be called clean by any standard. Although I was told I'd be staying in the newly renovated annex, I found myself in the old wing. Could there have been a mistake with the room assignment? When I mentioned the possibility of a mistake to Irene, she gave me a mean-spirited smile. "Linda specifically requested that you be placed in this room. Linda and I go way back. I couldn't possibly refuse a request from her," she explained. I couldn't believe Linda and Irene were in cahoots. Come to think of it, it was Linda who had decided on this inn. She must have been planning this harassment from the start. I was disgusted by the elaborate extent of the harassment. My fatigue suddenly intensified, weighing heavily on me. "This area is quieter than the new wing, so you should enjoy the peace," Irene said sarcastically before leaving. Dinner time came quickly, and the meal was served. However, it was so simple that it hardly seemed fitting for a luxury inn. Sandwiches were all that was offered. Irene stated, "This is all there is," when she brought the meal. It was nothing like what I had seen on the inn's website beforehand, and although I considered complaining, it felt pointless to protest. Moreover, despite having heard there would be a banquet, there was no sign of being invited at all. Eating alone, I reflected on my life thus far. Despite following my grandfather's advice to be kind to others, it never seemed to pay off. I even doubted my actions, wondering if I should have just kept to myself. I lost all interest in enjoying the massage therapy I had been looking forward to. Though I wasn't explicitly told not to take massage therapy, I doubted it would improve my mood. After taking a bath in the one provided in my room, I quickly crawled into the bed. Regretting my decision to come on this company trip, I fell asleep. The next morning, I was awakened by my phone's alarm. I heard we were going hiking in the nearby mountains, but I expected to be left behind again. As I pondered how to spend my day, someone knocked on my door. Expecting it to be breakfast, I was surprised to hear a deep voice saying, "It's Paul Thomas. May I come in?" The person at the door claimed to be Mr. Thomas. The voice was unmistakably his, but why would he visit the room of a regular employee like me? I let him in, and he immediately apologized. "I'm truly sorry for what happened." I urged him to stop apologizing and asked for an explanation. Do you have a supervisor named Linda? I had received complaints about her behavior but lacked concrete evidence to take action. However, I joined this trip intending to gather some proof. I never imagined she would leave you at the rest area. When I arrived at the inn and didn't see you, I confronted Linda, the organizer, who confessed to leaving you behind as a form of harassment. I tried to find you by car but was unsuccessful. I'm sorry for making you walk such a long distance. I must have missed him while searching for the cell phone in the forest. Relaying this to Mr. Thomas seemed to relieve him. I was worried you might have fallen ill somewhere. It's good to see you're safe. I came back as soon as I heard you had arrived at the inn. It was late, so I decided to explain everything in the morning. I apologize for the trouble caused by leaving Linda unchecked. Rest assured, she will be appropriately disciplined soon. Thank you for understanding, I replied, finally feeling a bit of relief. It seemed peace was on the horizon. Just then, Emily appeared, saying, "Excuse me." I was surprised to see her, as I thought she wasn't participating in the trip. But the real shock came next. Emily revealed that she was Mr. Thomas's niece and had been accompanying him on the trip. She had been searching for me along with him. Under direct orders from Mr. Thomas, Emily had acted as a decoy to gather evidence of the harassment. However, because I had intervened to help her, she was removed from Linda's target list, making it difficult to obtain decisive evidence. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interfere. When I apologized, Emily quickly waved her hands in dismissal. No, I was really happy you helped me. Even though I volunteered to be a decoy, it wasn't pleasant, so I appreciated your support. Emily seemed to want to say more, but hesitated and fell silent. Emily, at a time like this, why don't you honestly express your feelings? Prompted by Mr. Thomas's words, Emily looked up suddenly. Ever since you helped me, I've started to see you in a romantic light. I know this might be sudden and perhaps even unwelcome, but the idea of inconvenience was far from my mind. I have been interested in Emily as well, so her confession made me happy. When I shared my feelings, Emily blushed but seemed pleased. A sweet atmosphere, like that of a new couple, filled the space between us. It looks like the issue with Linda is about to be resolved, and my dear niece has found a good man, Mr. Thomas said with a hearty laugh. Just then, another visitor arrived. It was Irene and the elderly man I had met on the mountain path. "Why are you here?" I asked surprisingly. The elderly man expressed his gratitude for finding his cell phone and revealed his true identity. He was Irene's father and the former head of the inn. Now, he only helped out occasionally but came to apologize for Irene's misdeeds. "I've caused you terrible trouble. You were supposed to check out tomorrow, but please stay until the day after. There will be no extra charge, and we'll ensure you receive proper service. And Irene, you must apologize as well," he sternly told Irene, who then apologized with a remorseful look. "Please accept my sincerest apologies." Feeling relieved after receiving an apology, I initially hesitated to stay another night, but the elderly man insisted, wanting to thank me for finding his cell phone, so I gratefully accepted his offer. I was promptly escorted to a clean room. I enjoyed the massage therapy and indulged in luxurious meals. The flowers the elderly man had picked were decorated in my room, leaving me thoroughly satisfied. Despite the challenges, I was able to leave feeling refreshed. Later on, it was discovered that Linda had also been embezzling funds. Naturally, she was dismissed from her job. Due to her age, Linda is reportedly having a hard time finding new employment. Her habit of purchasing large quantities of luxury goods has led to her savings being depleted. Irene, too, was stripped of her role as proprietress and had to relearn basic manners from scratch. I was appointed to Linda's former position. Thankfully, I was personally chosen by Mr. Thomas for the role. Receiving encouragement to persevere with a sense of justice, I felt deeply moved, as if all my past actions had finally been rewarded. Furthermore, I reunited with James. After working for a company that manufactures caregiving products, James decided he wanted to interact directly with the elderly and join my workplace. James supports me, saying, "You helped me back in high school, and I couldn't do anything for you then." His assistance has been invaluable. Emily and I officially started dating. Mr. Thomas even mentioned, "You might become part of our family someday. With a good person like you, I feel reassured." Our relationship has been progressing smoothly, and I've been contemplating proposing to Emily recently. The day we become a family seems near. Upon marriage, I'm committed to building the happiest home possible. People without a high school diploma are destined to be alone forever. After more than a decade, I reunited with my classmate Max at a class reunion, and then again during a business meeting at a hotel. When Max interrupted the business meeting with disdain, I couldn't hide my anger as he started boasting about himself and hurling insults at me. However, the situation took a turn when a certain individual appeared, causing Max's face to contort. As we were arguing at the hotel entrance, a black car pulled up, and a beautiful woman stepped out. "Sorry to keep you waiting." As the woman approached me, a dumbfounded hut escaped from Max. Revealing her identity to Max only added to his shock. This reunion set the stage for Max to plummet into the depths of his own making. My name is Tom Parker. I'm 33 years old. I run a company called Johnson Industries. In simple terms, we supply machinery to factories and other businesses. The company was originally founded by my great-grandfather on my mother's side and was passed down to my grandfather, then to my father, and finally to me, the only son. Since I was young, I was told by my father and grandfather that I would be the next successor, so I joined Johnson Industries right after graduating middle school. Honestly, I did have a desire to go to high school and college. But once I started working and got into the machinery, I was hooked. Now, I'm so glad I chose this path instead of pursuing further education. After 15 years of hard work, I took over from my father as president at the age of 30. Initially, being the grandson of Chairman Johnson and the son of President Parker, I faced a lot of skepticism from the employees, which was tough at times. But now, the employees recognize my efforts and dedication, and they support me. Being a president is challenging, but my days are fulfilling. One day, a postcard arrived for me out of the blue. Little did I know at the time, this postcard would lead to an unbelievable series of events. After a usual day at work, I came home and my girlfriend Olivia, who was living with me, handed me a postcard. "Today, there was a postcard in the mailbox for you, Tom." The postcard was an invitation to a middle school reunion. As I pondered over the postcard, Olivia looked at me curiously. "Why are you making such a serious face? Don't you want to go to the reunion?" It seemed I was wearing a rather grim expression. "To be honest, I'm torn about going," I replied, leaving Olivia even more puzzled. I had a reason for feeling this way. There was someone from my class I didn't want to meet. I would have liked to catch up with old friends, as reunions don't happen often. But the thought of encountering that person made it hard to decide. The person I didn't want to meet was Max, a classmate from my second and third years of middle school. In school, I wasn't particularly prominent or obscure. I was somewhere in the middle. In contrast, Max was very popular and always at the center of our class. Normally, we wouldn't have crossed paths, but once we were in the same class, Max started to see me as an adversary. We never really talked, so I couldn't have done anything to upset him. But for some reason, Max was always hostile towards me. Being forced into class duties and having to do Max's and his clique's chores was a regular occurrence. If I ever tried to resist, Max would retaliate with even more hostility. Poor people should just listen to me. Don't you dare defy me. Forced by his entourage, I reluctantly complied with Max and his group's demands. But there was one thing I couldn't forgive. It happened when I announced I would join a family business instead of continuing my education. When Max asked about my future plans and I mentioned I was going to work, he burst into laughter. So your family is too poor to send you to high school? Well, that's rough. Can't believe your dad can't even afford to send you to school. You really lost the parent lottery. Being insulted about my family truly made my blood boil. Ever since that incident, I've done my best to avoid Max and led a peaceful life from middle school to the present. I still can forgive him for what he did, and if possible, I'd rather not meet him again. When I shared this middle school experience with Olivia, she pondered for a moment before saying, I know it must have been tough back then, but reunions don't happen every year. It might be a good idea to go. Max has probably matured since then and won't bother you. Olivia kindly encouraged me. Indeed, she had a point. Convinced, I decided to attend the reunion. On the day of the reunion, I finished work and headed straight to the hotel where it was being held. Most of my classmates had already gathered, and it was surreal seeing their faces after so many years. The guys hadn't changed much, but the girls were unrecognizable, and I had a hard time identifying them even when they spoke to me. I looked around to check on Max's whereabouts, but it seemed he hadn't arrived yet. According to a classmate, he was running late due to work commitments. Catching up with old friends turned out to be surprisingly enjoyable. As we reminisced over drinks, I found myself indulging more than usual. I was glad I took Olivia's advice and attended the reunion. However, the good times didn't last. While chatting with some close friends from back in the day, Max showed up late and remarked, "Look who's here, the pool kid." He had already had a few drinks by the time he arrived at our group. I was so engrossed in my conversation that I hadn't noticed Max's arrival. Contrary to Olivia's hopes, Max hadn't changed at all, neither in appearance nor in attitude. But I was a grown man now. "Hey, long time no see, how've you been?" I responded maturely to Max's taunts. Annoyed by my demeanor, Max, flushed with anger and alcohol, sneered, "Got time to kill here, do you? Must be because you didn't even finish high school, right? Can't imagine anyone decent hiring you." Despite attempts by a few classmates to calm him down, Max remained unapologetic. "Thomas." One of the classmates tried to intervene, but I stopped them. "It's okay, really. So Max, where are you working these days?" When I asked, Max began to speak with a look of self-satisfaction on his face. "I'm a sales supervisor at Harrison Industries." Harrison Industries was a fairly well-known company, not a major conglomerate but sizable. "I'm just a supervisor now, but I'm set to become the president in the future." "President? For family connections or something?" Upon hearing my words, Max's expression grew even more smug. No, I'm going to become part of the family. I was introduced to the president's daughter by President Harrison himself. We're dating now and plan to marry next year, so I'm the next president in line." It seemed he had been set up with the only daughter of President Harrison, and things had progressed smoothly to engagement. "I have everything you could ever want but can't have. Jealous. Wishing you happiness," I replied, seeing no point in engaging further. Yet, Max seemed displeased with my response. "What's with that attitude? I've always hated that smug look of yours." Perhaps the alcohol had clouded his judgment as he lunged at me. I was taken aback by his sudden move, but thanks to nearby classmates and the organizers, I managed to avoid confrontation. Assured by the organizer that they would handle the situation, I regretfully decided to leave the rest to them. I thought my presence might only cause more trouble, which is why I decided to leave. Reluctantly, I exited the scene. Later, I received a call from a classmate who had exchanged numbers with me. filling me in on what happened after I left. Max had caused such a scene that the organizers had to forcibly remove him from the venue. I'll never forgive him. It seems Max harbored anger towards me until the end. Some classmates even asked me, "Did you do something to him?" I still can't understand what about me irked him so much. When I shared the reunion story with Olivia, she said with a look of disbelief, "Some people just don't change even as adults. It's quite a learning experience." Some time had passed since the reunion. I had almost forgotten about that day and was living my usual life when some exciting news came my way. A company I had been courting for years reached out, wanting to discuss business in detail. It felt like a dream come true, and I was over the moon, but then a problem arose. The issue was that the meeting was scheduled on the same day as Olivia's birthday. Normally, I would prioritize work. However, it was going to be our first birthday celebration together, and I had made reservations at a restaurant months in advance. But I couldn't afford to turn down this business opportunity. As I was wrestling with this dilemma, Olivia noticed and asked what was wrong, so I explained the situation to her. If it's for work, then it can't be helped. Seeing Olivia's disappointed face made me feel incredibly guilty. Unable to give up on either, I was searching for a solution. At that moment, something suddenly occurred to me. This hotel, coincidentally, the venue Mr. Thompson had chosen for the meeting, was the same hotel where I planned to have dinner with Olivia. As long as the meeting didn't overrun, there would be a 1-hour window before our reservation. "I'll send a car to pick you up on the day. Can you take it to the hotel?" "That's totally fine, but are you sure?" "Yeah, the meeting is with Mr. Thompson, and it's in the same hotel, so there shouldn't be any issues." Reassured by my words, Olivia seemed pleased. I was relieved to have resolved one issue, but little did I know what was to come. On the day of the meeting, I arrived at the hotel lounge to find Mr. Thompson already enjoying a coffee. Mr. Thompson was staying at this hotel because his daughter and her family, who live far away, had come to visit. They were out sightseeing, and Mr. Thompson planned to join them after our meeting. This was why our meeting was scheduled at the hotel. The meeting started well, with Mr. Thompson listening intently to my presentation and even offering positive feedback. I had received encouraging feedback and was hopeful things were going well when suddenly, "Tom, what are you doing here?" Max appeared in the lounge, accompanied by a man who seemed to be his junior colleague. As I was processing this unexpected encounter, Mr. Thompson asked, "Do you know him?" To which I replied that we were former classmates. "Even a poor guy like you gets to do business in a place like this. Seems like an outfit for you." Max commented, despite it being clear I was in the middle of a meeting. Mr. Thompson looked puzzled at Max's interruption. "I'm at a meeting right now. Can we talk later?" I tried to deflect, but Max, unfazed, pulled out his business card and handed it to Mr. Thompson. "I don't know what this meeting is about, but you'd be better off doing business with us instead of this bottom feeder. A college graduate like me can give you a much better presentation than a high school dropout." Despite my attempts to intervene with a "hey," Max wouldn't stop. He continued to boast about his own superiority and looked down on me as the lowest of the low. Mr. Thompson's expression darkened, and he abruptly declared, "I can't stand this any longer. This is intolerable. Today's meeting is cancelled." With that, he stormed out of the lounge, visibly furious. I hurried after Mr. Thompson, but for some reason, Max and his junior colleague followed as well. As Mr. Thompson got into a taxi, I apologized, saying, "I'll come to apologize properly." He responded with a kind expression, promising to contact me later to reschedule. After seeing Mr. Thompson off, I turned and glared at Max behind me, shouting, "What were you thinking? Interrupting someone's business meeting like that? What's going on in your head?" Yet, Max showed no sign of remorse. I wasn't trying to interfere on purpose, just offering some friendly advice. Feeling it was pointless to continue the conversation, I quickly decided to leave the scene. I'll be staying here soon with my fiancé. We came today to check out the place in advance. I didn't ask, but Max volunteered this information anyway. I just randomly chimed in and was about to return inside when Max suddenly said, "People without a high school diploma will always be alone." Confused by his comment, I was taken aback when he added, "You're heading towards a lonely old age, so maybe I should ask my fiancé to set you up with someone. But then, everyone probably rejects poor people like you." Unsure how to respond, I was at a loss when suddenly, a sleek black car pulled up in front of us. A stunningly beautiful woman emerged from the sleek black car. Her beauty was so overwhelming that Max and his junior colleague were left speechless. The woman looked at me and said, "Sorry to keep you waiting." I wasn't waiting, just had some things to deal with and came outside. The woman who had stepped out of the car was Olivia. As we were exchanging words, a confused "huh" could be heard. Turning towards Max, I saw him demanding, "Hey, who's this beauty? Introduce me. Can't you tell from the conversation? This is Olivia, my girlfriend. Pleased to meet you, I'm Olivia." Upon introducing Olivia, Max incredulously started mocking me in front of her. "No way. Someone like you couldn't possibly have such a gorgeous girlfriend. What kind of dream are you living in? A high school dropout at the bottom of the social ladder couldn't possibly be with someone so beautiful. She's wearing brand name stuff, and you're worlds apart. There's no way she's your girlfriend." Watching Max laugh and point at me stirred my anger. Just as I was about to retort, Olivia stepped in. "Could you please stop mocking my boyfriend? It's extremely unpleasant." Her clear displeasure and those words seemed to unsettle Max. "Is that really true?" Max asked me, to which I nodded firmly. Unexpectedly, Max made an audacious move. "It's a waste for you to be with someone like him. Why don't you switch to me?" Incredibly, right in front of me, her boyfriend, Max started hitting on Olivia. He was spouting off cheesy lines, suggesting she'd be better off switching to him instead of staying with me. Appalled by his lack of decorum, I was about to intervene when Olivia cut in. "I'm not interested in someone as rude as you. You seem to have an inflated opinion of yourself, but my boyfriend is far superior to you in every way." Max was visibly shocked by her words. This guy, really? By the way, how did the meeting go? Well, about that. I began to recount the recent events to her. Olivia looked at Max with a sly smile and said, "You've done it now. That man is very strict about manners. He must be furious. It's over for you." Max, still smug, laughed it off. "What are you talking about? It's just a meeting with some low-level dropouts business contact. It's probably no big deal." As Max laughed heartily, I decided to reveal a crucial piece of information. The person you angered and drove away was Mr. Thompson, the president of the Thompson Group. Wait, the Thompson Group, that's our most important. Well, there's hardly anyone around here who doesn't know them. The Thompson Group is a major company that oversees this entire area. Moreover, from what I've heard, Harrison Industries appears to be one of the Thompson Group's most important business partners. Making such a person angry could be a significant problem. As Max turned pale, I decided to address more facts. "You've always been calling me poor, but on what basis are you saying that? What are you talking about? Your family didn't have the money to send you to high school, right? That's why you ended up a high school dropout." Max retorted, clearly misunderstanding my situation. He seemed to think I didn't pursue higher education because my family was impoverished. I had explained when asked that I joined a family business after middle school, but he must have missed that part. So, I took the opportunity to clarify that I joined a family business by choice, not because we lacked funds. "I never heard that," Max said, looking at me as if seeing something unbelievable. Unable to hide his shock, I took the moment to ask something I'd wondered for years. "Max, you've been hostile towards me since middle school. Did I ever do something to you? If I did, I'd like to know. Max hesitantly began to explain the reason for his hostility. It's because Lily said she liked you. Lily was the girl considered the idol of our grade. I didn't particularly care, but most of the boys liked Lily. Max was probably one of them. Once in middle school, Max confessed his feelings to Lily. During that confession, Lily told him, "I like Tom," and rejected him. It seems his pride was wounded because he was turned down to someone like me, who wasn't even popular, and since then, he has held a grudge against me. I never imagined that such a trivial matter could be the reason for his hostility. For something so trivial, it was so absurd that I found myself saying it out loud without realizing. Hearing this, Max became visibly angry and seemed ready to confront me physically. "How dare you call it trivial? If it weren't for you, I could have been with Lily." I was utterly astounded by Max's grievance. "Don't get cocky just because you're some bottom feeder. I'm a sales supervisor at Harrison Industries. You're not in a position to talk back to me." While being restrained by his junior, Max glared at me and said those words. Then, Olivia, who was standing next to me, suddenly burst into laughter. "A sales supervisor standing up to a president like Tom, that's quite amusing." "What? President? Who are you talking about?" "My boyfriend." "You didn't know Tom is a president?" When Olivia said that, Max looked as if he'd been hit by a bolt from the blue. "Actually, I'm the president of Johnson Industries. I took over from my parents." "Johnson Industries? No way, that's..." Max's shock was understandable. Though I say it myself, my company is considered a major player in the industry, and it's on a different scale compared to where Max works. It's not a company I started, but it has a long history of achievements. Frozen in place, Max couldn't seem to grasp the reality before him. "Tom, isn't it about time?" Olivia said, looking at her watch. It was 10 minutes before our reservation. "You better make a proper apology to Mr. Thompson." With that, Olivia and I went back into the hotel. The next day, when I arrived at the office, I noticed a familiar figure causing a scene at the reception in the lobby. As the receptionist noticed me and called out with a troubled look, "President Parker," the person turned and approached me briskly. "What do you want, Max?" It was Max at the reception. Red-faced and agitated, he grabbed my collar and accused, "It's your fault Mr. Thompson canceled our contract. Take responsibility." It seems that there had been a call from Mr. Thompson's office to terminate the contract with Harrison Industries, causing a major uproar. "What do you expect me to do? This isn't something I can fix. You'll have to sort it out yourself. If you just apologize to Mr. Thompson, everything can be settled. It's all up to your apology. An apology from me won't solve anything." We argued back and forth in the lobby, but it was going nowhere. "You have to do something, or my engagement and everything else will be in jeopardy." I decided to reveal another fact to Max. "Even if things with Mr. Thompson are resolved, I think your engagement will be called off." "Why would that be?" "I didn't mention it before, but my girlfriend is Mr. Thompson's niece." Max whispered in disbelief. "What?" "Olivia's father also runs a company, and she's essentially a president's daughter too. Coincidentally, she's friends with the daughter of President Harrison." On our way to the restaurant, Olivia mentioned, "That guy looks just like my friend's boyfriend. I've only seen photos, but they're identical." I then told her that Max was engaged to the president's daughter of Harrison Industries. Excitedly, Olivia said, "Harrison Industries? Then he must indeed be my friend's boyfriend. She's the daughter of President Harrison." I was amazed at such a coincidence. Upon hearing this, Max turned pale and let go of me. "I think it's only a matter of time before this reaches the president's daughter through my girlfriend, and then it'll get to President Harrison," I said. At that, Max collapsed on the spot, muttering, "It's all over." Since we couldn't have him loitering in the company any longer, I told him, There's nothing I can do for you. You're disrupting work. So please leave. Max glared at me, got up, and then landed a solid punch on my cheek. Caught off guard, I fell to the ground. Security quickly intervened, restraining Max, who was then reported to the police and taken away. I'll be filing a formal complaint, so be prepared, I declared. As he was led away by the police, Max, tears streaming down his face, lamented, "This wasn't supposed to happen. It was supposed to be easy mode." Afterward, I intended to file a complaint about the assault. However, Max's parents came to me multiple times, offering to pay for the treatment and compensation, pleading for a settlement, which I eventually agreed to. Max's parents seemed like decent people, making it all the more baffling how Max turned out the way he did. Due to this incident and being taken away by the police, Max was fired from his job. He was dumped by the president's daughter, evicted from the company dormitory, and ended up losing his home and job. He was reportedly going around asking friends and acquaintances for money. Some classmates must have complained to his parents, who couldn't stand to see their son's downfall, and found him a live-in job. According to a classmate, Max is working there now, but his salary is managed by his parents, leaving him with no disposable income. It's his own doing, so I hope he reflects on his actions. Afterward, I had the opportunity to negotiate with Mr. Thompson once again. This time, we successfully finalized a contract, and I breathed a sigh of relief. Mr. Thompson even went as far as to say, "Please take good care of my niece." Recently, I proposed to Olivia. I had decided to propose once my work was on track. Tears in her eyes, Olivia said, "Thank you. Now that I have even more to protect, I'm committed to do it with all my might." "Don't open it." Startled by Michelle's loud voice, I instantly stopped my hand that was about to open it. "You made me jump. What's up all of a sudden?" Seeing Michelle so desperately serious, I couldn't help but put the souvenir back on the table. "What do you mean?" When I asked Michelle, she hurriedly showed me her cell phone screen. It might be confusing to hear this out of the blue, but I think I might know what this is about. "What?" I couldn't grasp the meaning of her words and decided to ask for more details. Then, Michelle revealed something unbelievable. "My name is James. I'm 37 years old. I have a wife named Michelle, who is 2 years younger than me. Michelle and I went to the same high school and were close friends since our student days. We had no romantic feelings for each other at the time and were just good friends. However, at the age of 25, we happened to meet again at a local bar and started dating, which eventually led to our marriage. Michelle is an excellent cook and has a gentle personality. When I come home from work, she always comforts me and waits with delicious home-cooked meals, making her a wonderful wife. However, for the past 10 years, I haven't been able to spend much time with Michelle. The reason is that I was assigned to a 10-year overseas assignment by my company. I find my job fulfilling, and I took a positive view of participating in the overseas expansion of the company, so I have no regrets. Being abroad was challenging at first due to the different language and culture, but now that the project has ended successfully, I am glad I took part in the assignment. Thanks to taking long vacations over these 10 years, I was able to see Michelle occasionally. Although once a year was the most I could manage, Michelle always welcomed me warmly upon my return. Initially, I was anxious about the long-term assignment, but thanks to Michelle's kindness, we have been able to maintain a harmonious relationship. After completing the overseas assignment and taking a few days off, I was doing the final check of my report in preparation for returning to the main office the next day. "Are you still up? You have work tomorrow, right? Maybe you should go to bed soon." While I was looking at the computer documents in the bedroom, Michelle expressed her concern. "Thanks, I'm okay. I'm just finishing up the final check on the report, I'll go to sleep in a bit." Responding thus, I turned my attention back to the computer screen. "That's good. It'll be nice to see everyone at the office tomorrow after a while. Yeah, I need to make sure not to forget the souvenirs for them." Hearing Michelle mention the office, I thought of my colleagues in the same department. Everyone in the department is nice, and as the one in charge of training the juniors, I've built good relationships with my subordinates. However, there's one person in the department with whom I just can't seem to get along. That person is the department head, Scott, who is in the same sales department as me. Scott is 35, 2 years younger than me. He joined the company right after graduating from college and quickly rose to the position of manager due to his talent. When I joined the company as a mid-career hire, Scott often taught me about the work. We went to the same high school, which was a coincidence, and I heard that he had interactions with Michelle in the same class. I was very happy about this strange connection when I first joined the company. Feeling anxious in an unfamiliar environment, having someone with a common background gave me some peace of mind. Initially, Scott was very kind and friendly towards me because of this connection. However, his attitude changed drastically one day. It was shortly after I joined the company. I had finished my onboarding and was receiving training from Scott to start my full-time duties. We were chatting casually after the training had ended. "By the way, James, you're married, aren't you?" "Yes, I got married about a year ago." Scott noticed the wedding ring on my finger and started a conversation as if he had just remembered. "What's your wife like?" After a brief chat about married life and our homes, Scott asked me this question. "Actually, she's a friend from high school. If I remember correctly, she's the same age as you, Scott." "Really? Then I might know her too, right?" When I mentioned that Michelle and Scott were the same age, Scott's eyes widened in surprise. "As a matter of fact, do you know Michelle Knight?" The moment I mentioned Michelle's maiden name, Scott froze. At the same time, I felt a slight tension in the air. "Michelle, is that true?" After a brief silence, Scott muttered in a faint voice. Yes. Did you know my wife?" I felt the friendly atmosphere disappear and asked with a bit of unease. "Yes, we had a little interaction during our school days. I had no idea you were married to her." And from that day on, Scott's attitude towards me changed. Whenever I asked about work, he would treat me coldly, and on bad days, he would scold me harshly. There were also times when I wasn't informed about meeting schedules, leading to me being late. Such actions by Scott, which could be seen as harassment, continued until the day I left for my overseas assignment. This overseas assignment was also initiated by Scott's recommendation to the executives. When the company was looking for employees to take on a 10-year overseas assignment, the sales department was asked to nominate some candidates. However, finding candidates was difficult as many in the sales department, including myself, had families. Seeing this, Scott secretly recommended me to the executives. At the time, I had just moved into my dream home and had not considered a 10-year assignment at all. But by the time I realized it, the recommendation had progressed too far, and it was difficult to decline. When the executive director, Ken, brought up the overseas assignment, I asked Scott what was going on. "Scott, I just heard about the overseas assignment from Ken. He said you recommended me because I was eager to go. But I don't recall ever saying that. What's going on?" I was confused and hurriedly asked Scott for clarification. "What? But James, you said you wanted to contribute more to the workplace, right? So I thought I'd do you a favor and recommend you." Scott replied with a smirk to my question. "Besides, James, you're about to turn 27, right? If you don't get promoted from section chief soon, you'll never make it any further in your career." Continuing, Scott looked at me with a dark smile. "Indeed, I do want to continue contributing to this company. However, I had just bought a home and considered a 10-year assignment difficult. It would also be a burden on my wife. As I mentioned my wife, Scott's brow furrowed for a moment. James, are you taking your job lightly? At your age, prioritizing your private life is naive. You're approaching your 30s, right? We need you to start taking your job seriously. I recommended you for your future, so a little gratitude wouldn't hurt, would it? I was angered by Scott's condescending attitude but clenched my fist and endured the situation. After that conversation, I departed for my overseas assignment. As I reminisced about my interactions with Scott in the bedroom, Michelle approached me again, looking concerned. James, are you okay? You look pale. Yes, I'm fine. All right, I've finished the final check. I'm going to bed now. With that, I settled into bed. The next day, I returned to the main office for the first time in 10 years. After greeting my colleagues with souvenirs, I sat down at my desk. The office had changed in the last 10 years, with renovations and new equipment. My desk had also been replaced with a brand new one. For a while, I looked around the office as if everything was new to me. Then, I noticed Scott arriving at work. He was carrying a large paper bag. He must have gone on a trip somewhere. As I thought about it, Scott began distributing items from the bag to the other employees. After giving souvenirs to everyone, he came over to me last and pulled out a large box from the bag. Good morning. Long time no see. Actually, I went on an overseas trip last week on paid leave. I bought a souvenir for you, James. So make sure to open it when you get home. After finishing his sentence, Scott handed me the box he was holding. It was carefully wrapped so its contents were not visible, and it felt somewhat heavy. Although I was curious about what was inside the box, I remembered that I had also brought back souvenirs from my overseas assignment and hurriedly responded. Thank you. I also brought back some souvenirs from my business trip, so please have some. As I said this, I handed Scott the local souvenir I had purchased for him. Scott accepted the souvenir and simply replied with a thank you. It seemed like Scott was in a very good mood today. I could tell he was in high spirits from his smiling face and cheerful tone. How was your overseas assignment? Well, there were many challenges, but I'm relieved that we managed to complete the project on schedule. This should further expand our business at the overseas branches. Scott and I talked about the overseas assignment for a while. After I had finished explaining the project, Scott asked another question. So, did you manage to return home during your trip? Yes, I was able to take annual leave once a year, so I managed to come back a few times. Upon hearing this, Scott briefly smiled slyly. I see, it's hard to come back from overseas often, but I guess your wife must have had a good rest, right? I often hear that wives are busy with household chores every day when their husbands are around. Well, yes, I suppose my wife was able to enjoy a relaxed life in our new home. I responded to Scott's question accordingly. I had always thought this, but Scott often brought up Michelle. Although it wasn't too strange since they were high school classmates and knew each other, Scott's eyes always seemed to be probing something whenever he talked about her. Each time, I replied with non-committal answers, but I wondered if I was overthinking things. With these thoughts, I finished my day's work and returned home. Hello. As I announced my arrival at the entrance, Michelle came out from the living room to greet me. Welcome back. How was your first day back at the head office after such a long time? Everyone seemed well, which was reassuring. And the sales department got 6 new recruits this year. It was quite lively thanks to them. While having this casual conversation, I handed Michelle the paper bag containing the souvenir Scott gave me in the morning. This is from Scott, the department head. He went on an overseas trip last week and brought back a souvenir. From Scott. It's quite big, isn't it? I wonder what's inside. Michelle looked intently at the souvenir I handed her. That's the thing. He said to check it out when I got home. Let's open it now." Saying this, I sat on the living room sofa and started to unwrap the souvenir. Michelle also came next to me to see what was inside. Upon opening the wrapping, we found a floral arrangement with brightly colored flowers bundled together. Looking at the floral arrangement in a slightly thick transparent case, Michelle and I exchanged glances. "This is a floral arrangement, isn't it? Why would Scott choose a floral arrangement as a souvenir? Who knows? I hadn't mentioned our anniversary or anything, so it doesn't seem like a congratulatory gift." While saying this, I hesitantly reached out to take the floral arrangement out of the transparent case. At that moment, Michelle exclaimed loudly, "Don't open it!" Startled by her loud voice, I immediately stopped my hand. "You made me jump. What's up all of a sudden? Don't open it. This might have a budding device hidden inside." Seeing Michelle so desperately serious, I instinctively put the souvenir on the table. "What do you mean, a budding device? I saw a post on social media recently about budding devices being hidden in souvenirs from abroad." As she said this, Michelle hurriedly operated her cell phone. "Look, according to this post, someone found a budding device hidden in a souvenir they bought overseas. There seems to be a spate of incidents involving budding devices hidden in floral arrangements recently." The post Michelle showed me on social media indeed mentioned budding devices hidden inside, with victims sharing their experiences. "But it's hard to believe Scott would do something like that," I calmly responded to Michelle, trying to reassure her as she was panicking. Then, Michelle began to share something unbelievable. "I know this might be confusing to hear all of a sudden, but I think I might know what's going on." Unable to grasp the meaning of her words, I decided to inquire further. "What do you mean? You know, Scott was a classmate from our high school, right?" "Indeed. Michelle, Scott, and I all attended the same high school." I was aware that Michelle and Scott had been in the same class and had some interactions in the past. "Well, he actually confessed his feelings to me a few times in the past. We were only in the same class once, but during those 3 years, he confessed to me about 4 times, asking me to date him." Hearing Michelle's words, I was speechless. "It's all in the past, and I didn't want to worry you with strange concerns, so I never mentioned it. I'm sorry. But that's all in the past, right? He might not have those feelings anymore." Trying to stay calm, I conveyed this to Michelle, though I could feel my own unease. "It's not just that. While you were on your overseas assignment, I found a few letters in our mailbox. They didn't have a sender's name, but they mentioned our high school days, so it might have been Scott." Hearing this, I began to reflect on Scott's past actions. I have been asked about my family situation several times before, as well as today's question, "Have you returned home?" After calming Michelle down, I took her to the bedroom. According to Michelle, she found the anonymous letters unsettling and had thrown them away. Though there was no evidence of the letters, Michelle's frightened expression at the time made me believe her story wasn't a fabrication. Once Michelle had fallen asleep, I took the floral arrangement from Scott and rushed to the police station alone. When the police examined the floral arrangement, they found a small budding device inside, just as Michelle had suspected. I remember shivering when the budding device was discovered. I immediately filed a police report. I was relieved I hadn't brought Michelle along. If I brought her with me, the shock would have been too much for her. After filing the report, I returned home. The next day, I tried to act as normal as possible when I went to work. The police had instructed me not to mention the incident to anyone, of course including Scott. Confronting Scott directly could provoke him and potentially lead to further harm. Moreover, there wasn't concrete evidence to prove Scott was responsible, so it was best to avoid any rash actions. This was the agreement I had with the police, so I maintained a composed demeanor at work. As time passed, before I knew it, the workday had come to an end. As the end of the day approached, one by one, My colleagues started to leave for home. When there were only a few employees left in the office, Scott approached me for a chat. "James, good job today. Did you open the gift from yesterday?" Scott's face seemed to hint at some ulterior motive as he looked at me. His smile was forced, and his eyes didn't seem to reflect genuine happiness. "Yes, I did. Thank you for the lovely floral arrangement," I replied with a generic response, careful not to give anything away. "That's great to hear. I thought it would be perfect for Michelle. I hope you can find a nice spot for it in your living room." "Thank you. I'll discuss it with my wife when I get home." After this exchange, Scott left the office in high spirits. Once Scott was out of sight, I felt a weight lift off my shoulders. That was a relief. The conversation ended without arousing any suspicion. After that, I too headed home. Michelle, who was in the living room, seemed somewhat restless. "Michelle, are you okay?" "Jer, thank you. I've been feeling uneasy since you told me about the budding device this morning." I had shared with Michelle about the incident at the police station that morning, thinking it was only a matter of time before she found out everything. Seeing Michelle's unsettled demeanor, I regretted revealing it to her. "I'm sorry, Michelle. I didn't mean to cause you any trouble. It must be hard being alone during the day." Michelle works remotely from home while I'm at the office. Even if Scott is at work, it's understandable she'd feel uneasy after what happened. It's bound to be unsettling. It's okay. If the police have accepted their report, they must be conducting a thorough investigation. Besides, you must have been more frightened today, James. Did Scott say anything to you? Even in such times, Michelle's first concern was for me. Hearing her words, I felt grateful once again to have her by my side. He asked if I had opened the gift, but that was all. He didn't ask anything else. From the look on his face, I think he believes the floral arrangement is still in our house. Upon hearing this, Michelle seemed slightly relieved and returned to the kitchen. 3 days had passed since my return to the main office, and it was my first day off. For some reason, I woke up earlier than usual and was having a coffee alone in the living room. Then, suddenly, the house's doorbell rang. Who could it be this early in the morning? As the bell rang, I checked the time. It was almost 7 a.m. Suspicious, I slowly approached the intercom. Then, I heard a loud knocking on the front door. The knocking was forceful, indicating urgency. Rushing to check the intercom monitor, I saw Scott's figure displayed. Even as I observed, the knocking didn't cease. Worried it might disturb Michelle or the neighbors, I mustered my courage and opened the door, keeping the chain on for safety. "Scott, what brings you here so early?" I asked cautiously, and Scott glared at me with an intensity I had never seen before. "You reported me to the police, didn't you?" That single sentence made everything clear to me. "Last night, the police came to my house. They questioned me till dawn about the budding device and the floral arrangement I gave to you." Scott's eyes were bloodshot, almost as if he was ready to lash out. "Please, calm down. I simply asked the police to investigate the budding device. If you are truly innocent, the investigation will prove it." As I spoke, Scott began to mutter under his breath. "You always act so cool, looking down on me. Even when I harass you, you remain unfazed. Why did Michelle choose someone like you? Why not me?" Scott's words were filled with jealousy towards me and affection for Michelle. Then, I heard footsteps descending the stairs. "James, who are you talking to?" Hearing Michelle's anxious voice, I immediately told her go back upstairs. But Scott, hearing her voice, spotted Michelle through the gap in the door. "Michelle, why did you go to the police? I only wanted to protect you." "Scott, why are you here?" Michelle, seeing an unexpected visitor at the door, was visibly distressed. "Scott, did you just admit to planting the budding device?" "Yes, I did. But budding device sounds so malicious. I sent it to protect Michelle." Is that so? Well, now that we have the evidence on tape, I'll have to report this to the police. Wait, what? With that, I dialed the police on my cell phone. Soon after, the police arrived at our home, and Scott was taken to the station. The audio recorded by our intercom's camera was enough evidence for the police to arrest Scott. 2 months have passed since that day. The incident with Scott became widely known within the company, leading to his dismissal. During police interrogation, Scott revealed that he had harbored feelings for Michelle since their school days and was displeased to see a subordinate happily living with the person he liked. Moreover, when the police searched Scott's home, they found several draft letters addressed to Michelle, suggesting his unrequited affection. As a result, Scott was sentenced to prison, and the situation was successfully resolved. Michelle and I continue to live happily in our home. Once my work settled down, we finally completed all the moving tasks for our dream home. Michelle, are you feeling all right? Yes, I'm fine. Dr. Smith at the clinic said the baby is growing well. Michelle said this while gently stroking her belly. That's great to hear. Let's keep building a happy family together. Yes, with you, James, I'm sure we'll have a joyful home forever. We exchanged smiles, looking forward to our future together.